functions that are related to axiomatic theory, as far as I understand it. I'll admit to not being a huge expert here, but that's why we have other Nick, and then hopefully Jose may also have some additional things. Nick has said that he's planning on working on a general theorem proving framework as well, but I don't know how far along
Yes.
that is.
But okay, given that, Nick, do these things also make sense? I think they do. I mean, find finite models seems like it makes sense,
Yeah, it
doesn't
makes
it?
sense, but I think like finite models would be like some kind of property or an artifact of that counterexample, maybe also, right? Or just another way to do the proof.
I think I understand find equational counterexample, but what is find finite models?
Given you have some relation, like some operator. Here, I'll show you.
I have to say that output is completely baffling.
Well, the input is baffling too.
Right.
This is a bad example of input. Let's see. Model theoretic. Okay. So given this relation, x dot y equals y dot x dot y, okay? The question is, what are the possible multiplication tables for dot? If x and y are both one of two elements, what are the possible multiplication tables consistent with that? So for example, if we gave the axioms group theory, the models would be the possible groups. That makes sense? Are you with me?
Sure.
So you're finding models for like the operators that you can put into find
Yes,
equational
that's
proof?
correct. That's correct.
I see.
And this is a way of getting a sense of whether a proof is true or whatever else. It's also people, find models for things. There was some conference I went to where it was literally about finite models, and they had all kinds of reasons why they were interested in finite models. It's just a capability that the algorithms. It's I think Nick has done something quite efficient here. Is that a fair statement, Nick? I mean,
It can be much more efficient. No, it's just some pure brute force with a little bit of pruning.
okay. Well, okay. So this may be complicated. No, that's very boring. It just has oh no, it has find finite models in there. Right. So we can just do find the size 2 finite models here. There we go. So that's a little bit less incomprehensible perhaps than this example here. I don't know what those numbers are a representation of the actual model here. That's just distinguishing the models. It could be just a list of models, right?
Right, yes.
I'm still kind of so am I supposed
Yeah, I
to,
don't know how to read this output either.
right. I mean, to me, the left-hand side are at best like some sort of index or label or something. And then I guess the right hand side, the inner associations are then, a representation of the
Right. The multiplication table. This may not be the best way to represent this. I mean, this is, if you say small circle is, it really what it is small circle is, and then, it's not obvious that we should label the possibilities starting from 0, because if we didn't do that, we could just say that, whoops, if we didn't label it starting from 0, then we could say that small circle of ij could be equivalent to this. See what I'm saying?
I see. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's sort of been natural in things I've done to start the labeling at 0, but I don't think it would be heinous to start it at 1. And then that would be what it would be for.
Or we have zero, we have a zero argument to tell us what is the smallest value. Just like array does, right?
Yeah, except that then you can't, then this identity isn't true.
Sure, but you could still get the second.
Yeah. No, I
Right,
understand.
right. You could still get the values, and then you'd have to adjust your indexing function to match whatever indexing convention
Right.
is. We could default to 1, but still have an option for people who want to get the 0 index version out, just like we have with array.
Right. I think there's a little bit more work to be done here, but it seems to me, I mean, Nick, what would it take to make find finite models really efficient?
So maybe well, it's already actually brute force is compiled. I'm not sure. Just some efficient low-level code. Maybe there's some algorithms that I just don't know about. I haven't actually looked into state of the art.
I looked into them a bit, and I don't think there is much. Okay, let's talk about find equational counterexample. So to me, this seems like a worthwhile thing. I mean, maybe it should be called find finite operator models or something. Actually, it's not really a find function because it will get all of them. Right? Or can it get only some of them?
Well, you're certainly, well, I suppose if you have to specify an order, yes, then you're conceivably
So
getting
there are max items option. You can limit.
Okay. Okay. Well,
right. So what does when you don't specify the max size, what does it do? Because certainly not going to list all if null finite models.
Well, there's
sure,
always the maximum number. The second argument is the limit.
Right, but what if you don't give the second argument? What does it do?
I think by default it's just 2 or 3 or something.
Okay.
No. It's giving all of them in this case.
Yes,
Look,
but I'm saying in the argument where you don't give the order.
Oh, you mean this order here?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's just do 2, I'm sure. Yeah, just does 2.
3 looks like.
No.
No, the 2 by 2 multiplication tables.
Okay.
That's the number of possible values for x. That's what it means to be a finite model, is that there are only, 2 possible choices for x and y.
Right. So you can't, so there's no way to say I want the size 2 through 5 models?
No, you typically want a particular size.
Okay.
Okay, so this, I personally think we should have this function. Maybe it should have a design change to, by default, be 1 indexed. See what I'm saying? And I also don't really see the point of having these prefixes here. Am I making sense?
I mean, what are they? They look like
They're
random
an
numbers.
ID. Look, they're the decimal version of this. They're useful if you have Boolean functions. If you could feed this thing directly into Boolean function.
Mm-hmm.
Or except, if this was this will tell us, yeah,
it's essentially the same information as the matrix.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about find equational counterexample. To me, it seems like a different piece of functionality from find equational proof. But maybe one just wants some more general thing about find proof, or I don't know. I mean, because proofs are a side effect. Most of what we do is computing. Or is find equational counterexample something that should be in reduce, for example?
Well, what I'm trying to do in this general framework is that there's not going to be 2 functions, right? For find the proof and the counterexample, just one find proof mega function that either returns a proof or a counterexample, right? So it's a bit smarter. So it's never just produces a failure.
How do you represent that? I mean, it's either got to be a proof function where you evaluated and it gives true, or a counterexample is a completely different kind of thing.
Well,
Isn't
just the
it?
object, right? We have a proof object which represents the proof when we actually find it, and the counterexample is also an object, like in the resource function, it's already prototyped, right? That produces another function like verification of that counterexample, right? It's just two types of object that your ultimate find proof thing can produce.
Okay, so your idea is just like we can say 4 equals 7, and that gives true or false, right?
Yeah.
Then you're saying that if I say find proof, that it will either give proof object, or it will give a counterexample object.
Right. Or failure if it completely can't find neither for some reason.
What would it do if it can't find either?
A failure object with a reason.
Fair enough.
So that's the current find equational proof, right? So it tries to find, and it might never find a solution. But if it finds a positive or a negative result, then it can return something.
Right.
So find counterexample already returns a counterexample object, and it creates a version of G.
Okay, so here, if I do the same thing,
So what returns a counterexample object?
Find the equational counterexample. That function is a
Okay.
WFR, which already works.
Right,
Now you would
so-
have to do counterexample association, and it gives the. So it has a property, counterexample association.
Right, so right now when find equational proof says the proposition could not be reduced to true, does that mean that it's false, or that it can do true or false, or
It
either
means
of them?
it means it knows it's false, and therefore it can find a counterexample.
Okay.
what does that setup stuff mean here?
So it's exactly what you were saying before. You have a matrix, which is a multiplication table, and then it has found a case, A.
So this is consistent with the axioms,
Exactly. And then the counterexample is B equal to.
and A equals 1.
And A equals 1, exactly.
I don't know why I put those separately.
Well, in a sense, you have your axioms that contain small circle and A, and then the hypothesis, which contains B. So it's going to give you separately a model of the hypothesis, of the axioms, and a model of the hypothesis.
Right. So this is a generalization, you're saying, of, find finite models. We're finding all these independent of the actual settings for the variables.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, there's clearly more work to be done here, but I think, Nick, what's your time frame for knowing what's going to happen with your find proof function?
Well, it's kind of well, there's a progress. I can maybe send you a link to some AI produced notebooks if you're interested, like even for the counterexample things. It's just not really like
Okay.
or anything.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we should not do that right now. We can talk about that separately. But it sounds like we've got some level of plan. It involves Nick's work and integrating these things, but I predict that find finite models is going to be a separate function. Okay, let's
Okay.
move on. Logging level.
So we started to talk about this a little bit last time. What I have is a general proposal for logging levels that would exist within the logging framework, as we also touched on briefly. Typically, in a logging framework, the lower the number is, the more important it is. I'd kind of imagined a three-pronged part where you could say log level goes to some explicit number, and we include anything lower than that. You could also use one of the ordinal objects or the string representing it. It's kind of nice to have the ordinal scale available so you know what potential levels there are. Did an inventory on different logging systems. It's the exact number of log levels varies a little bit. This is based on syslog, so it's been fairly standard in Unix systems for a while. Windows uses a similar one. Log4j uses a similar one.
Okay, I mean, my first comment is I think the priority 1 should be 1, not 0. It will just cause us trouble to have that be 0.
Yeah, so log4j uses that, for example, where 1 is basically the most important and 0 is a level that they use to basically turn off all logs. And within log4j's standard framework, nothing should be set to log level 0.
Okay, well,
basically,
fine, but I mean, that's a different.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a different.
So how would this work? Session logging.
If you have a prototype build, you can run this, but the examples are all there. This is basically the default logger will log everything. If you tell it with logging, I only want critical alerts, then it's not going to log anything basic. So you would basically be able to set at the individual logged object what its logging level is, and then whatever activator will have a corresponding level that says include everything this level and lower.
Okay. Okay, so the logging level could be set either to an integer, a string, or an ordinal object.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there wouldn't be any ambiguity there as long as we have them relatively well curated.
Okay. This looks sensible to me.
Okay. Yeah, this is basically what I've been going with, and I just wanted a quick kind of sanity check and make sure this looks reasonable.
And how many levels are...
Right now there are 8. This is based off syslog again.
Okay.
Most frameworks have anywhere from like 4 to 10 in really verbose cases. Not everyone makes a distinction between a notice and info level, but there's usually error, warning, some kind of debug, and then critical or emergency levels.
Right.
This
Yes.
seems reasonable to me. I don't see that we should reduce the number. I think having a plush number of levels is fine.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we can conceivably allow any arbitrary integer. If you want to say log level is 14, this is basically something that's never going to be activated. We could allow that. It just wouldn't be indexed into our scale or named.
Are we going to curate our own error messages for what we think their effective level is?
Well, error messages are not the same thing as logging. Our messages are not the same thing as logging. And
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have, if we had some sort of activator that said log all messages and or warnings, then I could see some notion of having an automatic log level that, an error message is error log level and a warning message is warning log level. But there's a relationship too between the log levels and tags too. We've talked about, I'm still kind of fleshing out the system for it, but having a lot of named keys within the implicit association that is each log entry. And tags would be, one way you collect those. And you may, if you end up with basically a big tabular that is representing the overall log document, you may say, I want to select all of the things that are tagged as, a communication exception, and I want all of the logs that are debug level or higher.
Okay, let's talk about cycling logs.
Yep. So we had this had been brought up last time, and I hadn't really looked into it. So this is kind of a high level summary. There are different conventions for cycling logs. Rotation is one of the most common, but there are some decisions to make there. Basic trade-off is complexity versus convenience and predictability.
Look, I would imagine we're going to end up with a big association that has lots of possibilities.
Mhm.
It reminds me a lot of scheduled tasks and how, I mean, I don't know why it should remind me of that, but the way that we're specifying the running of scheduled tasks, when,
Mhm. Triggers and yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, so these are just different examples of rotation conventions. I have a new log that I want to write out. Do we adjust all the rollover notion is basically you want the most recent log to be at the top, and so whenever you add a new log, you basically shuffle everything down.
You mean you rename the files?
Yes, so this is basically the convention. This is presented specifically for file-backed versions, where we're going to, if we say this is automatically logging into a directory, I want logs that are generated, maybe I want the logs that are generated per session. Every time I generate a new log, you can basically use a naming convention and a rotation system to keep the most current log up at the top or add it on to the end or have some kind of automatic archiving system. The potential there gets very complicated quickly because we're managing a bunch of files on the back end. But it's
Right, but
something
it
that
seems to
was
me that what aggregates into a single log file could be a session, it could be a day, it could be a week.
Mhm.
This again is sort of reminiscent somehow of things like scheduled tasks and granularity of dates and God knows what else.
Yeah, there's both a time component and there is either alternatively or in parallel a size component. You generally don't want a single log file that is, 14 gigabytes that we just
Mhm.
keep adding and adding and adding to. So the rotation exists there so that you can segment the logs reasonably, either on a time basis or a size basis or a combination thereof.
Okay,
There's
but let's say
trade-offs.
you're naming these log files, right?
Mhm.
If it was granular to a day, we know how to name them.
Yep.
If it was like there could be 7 in one day, how do we deal with that?
So you can basically use one of these rotation conventions to do that. This log is generated for today. It is log one. I generate a second one. Do I say, okay, move
It's
log
log
one
2.
down to log
Don't
two,
move
or do I
anything.
create log
Moving
two?
things just seems like a nightmare.
Yeah.
That
The
is
advantage is
that
predictability.
is that is the standard in at least in syslog.
Yeah. So syslog uses rollover. So whatever .log is the latest log. And every time it needs to create a new one, it shuffles everything down. So the largest number will be the oldest log. But that does introduce potential for, something interrupts the rollover
Yeah, it just seems
process.
horrifying.
My preference is to stick with something relatively simple at the start. And if someone wants to get more elaborate, potentially
No.
try and make the tools available.
I think there should be some string template or something that has various kinds of things like the current date
Mhm.
as some um
File name parameters or something.
right. Uh yes. I mean that basically there's a string template that says where is the it's like a little bit like the generated assets thing for
Persistence.
yeah, right. And I don't know whether you want these logs to be stored, you could store them in the cloud,
Yep.
for
Yeah.
example, in which case they're very similar to data bins.
Hmm.
Um, all right, let's see. No way. We're not going to try this. This is just
Okay.
horrifying.
Yep.
We just shouldn't do rotation. It just seems horrifying. We
Okay.
should
Yeah. I
just do
mean,
them.
this is one of those components I didn't initially plan for this version of logging, at least, and it came up in the last meeting, so I at least wanted to kind of see what the standards
All
were.
right. There are two things that I can imagine. daily logging or logging to a date granularity and session logging.
Hmm.
Those seem useful to me.
Yeah,
It
I
might be
could see
convenient to have,
automatically including process ID or something like that. Or
yeah, that's a good idea. Or, well, but it could be session start time
yeah, that's true.
and process ID, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah, I agree that at least to limit complexity, don't worry too much about rotation here. If someone really cares about rotation, you can set up a system where you're managing your own
Yeah, right.
rotation.
But then what you do is you give a date string thing there,
Hmm.
and if it is a first session, then you append to the date string where the date string is down to the minute, I would say for the sessions, and then you append the process ID. So I would suggest something of the form, well, I don't know whether it's app.log. I mean, what's the prefix here? What is app.log as a prefix? It's a weird prefix. I mean, and then this for a file name, you know, that's what I would imagine it would look like for a session.
Okay, yeah, I can play around with some templating options for automatic file names. And sometimes you're going to want an explicit file name. You can say, I put everything in this log, it's this log.
Yeah. Right. I think we should we use PID, not session, not some truncated session ID?
I feel like process ID is a little more conventional, but
Okay. Well, it's probably more useful I mean, it could be useful for some other purpose.
yeah.
Okay. That's what I suggest. Oh God, no, not a chance. Okay. So yeah, let's do a thing where we say, like in generated asset location, where are we putting the logs?
Hmm.
Could be a file, could be a local object, could be a cloud object, etc. Right?
Yep. Hmm.
Generated asset location is generally not a file, right? It's a directory.
Right. This should be a directory as well, shouldn't it? Or should this be a
It
thing where you're saying for the current log being created, this is the thing. I mean, you don't want to recompute where the log is going every time. I
right
mean,
when
here's a
you
question. A session breaks between days or between hours. Do its log entries start going to a different
the different
log file?
file.
Yeah,
I would think we probably want it going to a fixed location unless we have some sort of trigger that says, log is too big, create a new one, but
right.
we
Well, I don't
haven't
think we're
really.
going to worry about that. So that means that whenever the session starts,
Hmm.
that's what is the determinant of what
Yeah, the timestamp is session start time or
yes.
log generation time.
It might be clearer if the PID is always included.
Hmm. Yeah, there shouldn't be any ambiguous cases there. Have some kind of warning if for some reason you're generating a log that has the exact same name as an existing file. I guess you can at least warn someone before you write to it.
Right. Um, okay. All right. I should try and get to another meeting in a moment here. So,
Okay. So I know there's been, I'm sure, a number of discussions about rational queue or rational number queue in the history of the company. This came up a couple of times during our inventory of hallucinated functions from various LLM tools we have. Um, I, the notion here is not just match queue of rational. It would be, is this a non-imaginary exact number?
and so rational number of Q of X would give false.
Correct. rational number q of 23 gives true. Rational number q of 2.3 gives false.
This seems decently worth having. Now, I see it's not rational q
Right.
because that would be just a head check.
Right.
Yep.
Like we have our real valued blank q functions are not checking just that it's a real, they're checking that there is a real value. So it works for integers.
I'm believing in rational number q. I think it's a fine thing to do. Is this the right condition? Oh, I see. This is a condition on the values being returned.
Right. There's two potential conditions. There's on the values being returned, and there is farther down. This version of the WFR also has a notion of a cumulative condition.
What does that mean?
So not that first point here. That was just, this was just a case of if we say take while isn't there.
I mean, the point is, how do you return from a table? Can you use return to exit a table? I don't even know.
No.
I don't believe so.
No, I mean a table has a definite size.
Okay.
So
So you'd have to go to make a bunch of nothings.
yes, if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, you could catch and throw your way out, but that's the point I was starting to make was
right.
the
And
Go ahead.
well, actually, I'm not sure if table ever auto packs, but certainly if it auto packs, right, there's good reason to want it to complete, right? So it's rectangular.
Okay, but the condition is either the current value has some property.
Yep.
And I don't understand what to do if you have more than one iteration variable.
Right. So these don't have any limit, so you're entirely dependent on the
condition being met.
match
I don't think that's the right place to put the condition.
Yeah, I don't love this notation of individual element condition, comma, list condition.
No.
But I do think you potentially want to be able to look at either
so
or.
nest while takes the function.
well, nest is something that's done iteratively, right? So it
Well, I'm saying here the obvious thing to be.
The test is applied to the result of the iteration, not to the index.
This is not to the index either.
Right. I'm pointing out the table while there says in comma 1 comma less than. That makes it seem like that's a condition on in and not a condition on the elements of the table, which I think is.
But it is a condition on the elements of the table. I agree. That's the wrong place for it. So I'm supporting the idea. If this is table while and you know you're using table while, why not just do it this way? Just stick the test right in there.
well, except I have no idea what that means.
Okay, so that
Or
means
what shape I'm going to get out of it.
yeah, because you especially don't know how I runs versus J, for example.
For example.
And I guess the question is, if test was given as an argument, which is completely crazy now that I'm thinking about it, the complete ragged table made so far Yes, that's crazy. But that would be the analog of nest while, which gives you the expression formed so far.
Right, except in the case of nest while, so far has an unambiguous meaning. Right.
Well, I mean, so does table. Look, I mean,
well, it does up to a point, but I mean, that's arbitrary, right? Whereas nest, it's natural, right? Nest is naturally an indexing, right? Is naturally an iterative operation.
I mean, it's lexicographic order. It's not that ridiculous. It's
Sure.
both that and the flattened order of the elements in the final result.
Right, but then what? So you're saying you'll get sort of some number of complete rows and then a partial row, and that's it?
Yes,
And
I mean, you would get.
I'm very, very dubious of the utility of such a thing. I mean, in the 1D case, sure, but
Yeah. Well, okay, so then this would look like, this would be that case. You'd get that, for example.
yep. Right, and
But it's also, it seems very inefficient to give that.
right, you're right. I was going to say this could never be made efficient.
The thing that could be made efficient, by the way, Sander on live stream is asking about drop while. Analog of length while and take while. I kind of think we should have drop while.
I feel like we've talked about that at some point.
Yeah.
I think we should have drop while. I mean, a typical thing is trimming zeros off a list. Drop while hash equals 0.
Yeah, I'll dig up our notes on when we talked about it last, but we can take a look again.
I mean, the other possibility for table, what is table going to do if its test fails on this element? It's going to return a ragged table, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing it can do.
Yeah.
Which is somewhat weird.
Yeah, it's that or discard the whole row, which is also weird.
That's weird.
That's
Then we
weirder,
should have
yeah.
only a one-dimensional version.
Yeah.
I mean, let me think. Because I mean, a test might be if ever you have, well, it's some kind of failure or something. Okay, I'm not buying the multidimensional case here. The multidimensional case looks crazy to me.
It certainly simplifies the design.
Right. So then the one-dimensional case,
Right. And I suppose we could give it two arguments, right? So the first argument is the last element, and the second argument is everything generated thus far, if you want the global test for some reason.
Yeah, but is it going to be efficient to provide that? Okay, well, I think, okay.
Maybe if you want the whole thing, you have to make it available as supplied. And it's not given by default.
Whenever supplied is going to be supplied.
Indeed.
Yeah, Sandra is commenting that you want to do drop while from the end as well as the beginning, and I agree with that. That's a thing that I've needed a bunch of times.
Right, well, then that's not drop while, right? Because there's no there's no version of drop that's symmetric.
Well, what do you mean? I mean, drop of, you know,
Uh-huh. And there's drop of 4.
yeah, I know. But
Uh,
so, okay, so look,
so what's the version of drop that gives you, 5 and 6?
that's a take.
Okay, so there's no drop, there's no symmetric version of drop, therefore drop while couldn't do it from both ends, or at
I don't
least
understand.
not be a drop function.
Look, how do I get rid of the zeros at both ends?
Well, to me, that's trivial. You delete cases of 0, or you do 0 slash dot nothing. Slash dot 0 goes to nothing.
Okay, what do you do in that case?
Okay.
I must admit that I find this happens so often that I would consider a function trim. Which may be the main use for drop while.
mhm.
Trim of a list and the default is 0, and which is similar to our other, what's another case where we have a default 0? I mean, other than sparse array.
Add right.
Oh yeah. Right. How do you get rid of those padded things?
Right.
And I could see trim. I mean, we've got a collection here. We've got center array. Yeah, that's another case where we're talking about, right? That is a case where you had zeros by default.
Yep.
I think we should have trim. I've wanted that a million times. We certainly have WFRs that do it.
And then the second argument is a pattern. So
Yep,
if
there's a
with
pattern
the
for what to trim.
okay. I would accept this as a reasonably named and reasonably useful function.
Yes.
And coming from me, that's pretty high praise.
Okay, all right. That's good. I mean, maybe there's a left and right third argument.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we looked at something similar with array trim.
Right. Don't we have a string trim, which is basically this, only for white
We do.
space?
Yeah. Yeah, the challenge with array trim is you need to, if you have multi-dimensional cases, you are trying to return the, I guess, the largest populated rectangle or the smallest
Yes.
populated rectangle.
Yeah, you're trying to get the kind of the, yes. That's an interesting function, but vastly less useful than trim.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Let's
yeah.
just think about that for a second. Is there any? Go ahead.
Well, what would trim do if you gave it an array? Do we even want to think about that case?
Well, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, I agree
Well,
that
well, there's array trim and there's trim, right? I mean, another possible interpretation of trim of array is that it trims at the deepest level and, gets rid of all the zeros, leading and trailing zeros at the deepest level.
no, but I think it should do the same as pad right does with a list, which is to do it in a, pad right will always pad to the same. If I do this, it will do that.
Mm-hmm.
So the obvious trim there would achieve nothing, right? But if I were to do this, the trim would reduce it, would remove the rind
Right.
of zeros, which I think is useful. That seems like the right behavior to me.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, does pad right, if I go another level down, does pad right, if I do this, oh, that's nice.
Yep. I'm pretty sure it's in full array,
It's fully arrayed and it's full
Yes.
array clothes.
Yep.
There is also array pad.
What does array pad do?
Well, I think this is a more flexible operation for arrays.
Oh, I see. Array pad pads with a fixed amount of padding, as opposed to achieving a certain.
Mhm.
Which suggests that array trim, image trim, trims a fixed amount of an image.
Well, there's crop. I always get this confused. There's trim and crop.
Yeah. I know what the trim here, the smallest subimage, that includes the specified region of interest.
Right. So this is a very different operation. Right. Here you specify what's the piece you want, and it gets rid of, right? You basically give a rectangle and then it drops the complement.
Yes.
So
As opposed to array crop,
right. Which is
which
you
does
go
much more analogous to what this trim is doing.
right.
Which does suggest this should be called crop. Do we have string analogs of these? Yes, we have string
Yeah.
trim.
String trim, but we don't have string crop.
Well, I think we cooked that goose then. I think it would have to be trim.
Yeah.
The only
I
question is
understand the
array
distinction in
trim.
the image world, but yeah, I think trim is more intuitive. I think crop list.
Yeah.
I think
sometimes-
string trim corresponds to image crop.
Yeah.
Or am I
Exactly.
confused?
And therefore trim corresponds to,
String trim and image crop.
yes. It is the natural thing for images, so I'm not objecting to that. Let's explore trim. It seems useful to me.
Okay.
And let's do the the obvious thing with the alls. And I can see that third argument saying, for example, look, I've had plenty of cases where I would never want to trim at the sides, but I would want to trim at the bottom, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are levels there. And I think that last argument could be some kind of list of levels that could go all, or
Yeah, it
could
could be
go
like the
left,
grid
right,
or the
all.
alignment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it will be level that would look like, all right, all, for example.
Yep.
I like this function. I would use this a bunch. And this is my one use case for drop while. Okay. I got to go to another meeting.
Okay.
See you guys soon.
Thanks
Bye.
all.
Bye.